I am Joni with Looking at Careers with Joni, and I'm here today with Louisiana. And Louisiana has a real interesting story. She started working in the admissions office when she was in college, and it's just grown and it's blossomed into many different adventures for her. So, hi, Louisiana, how you doing?
Good, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
So
Good.
let's talk a little bit about how you first got started. How'd you even decide to get a job in the admissions office?
Yeah, great question. I the admissions process was such a it's an important process for any student that's going to school. It's a very involved process. And during my enrollment period, I, felt really inspired and motivated by those who helped me in my college enrollment process. And admissions was always a very interesting area for me. And with those relationships there, it became a familiar place of where I interacted with while I was a student at school. And in tandem with that, just wanting to bring in programming for our university that helped outreach with inner city kids and developing those programs. So it was a great combination because I was focusing on the inner city areas in the greater Boston, New Hampshire, New England area, and being able to provide experiences or give students in those areas a glimpse of what life could be like if they came to our university. So I started in that area, and admissions just was, I got to learn a lot more of admissions in general and, as a full-time career while
Right.
being in the office. And it was very enticing and interesting to me. And I loved the work behind it and the reason for it.
Hmm.
So once I graduated, I ended up going into admissions programs for different schools in the greater Boston area that were more trade school based, and got a little glimpse of what that was like in terms of admissions in a regular 9 to 5 role.
Sure.
So that's really where I first got my big glimpse into recruiting.
Uh huh.
And from there, it just happened to be, after you graduate school, you're just like, okay, I have this degree here. What do I want to do? And where do I want to go? And it's like,
What's
okay,
your degree in?
my degree's in theater and communication.
Okay.
Yep. So the possibilities of what you could do with that degree are endless. It's just how do you want
Yeah.
to apply it, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up getting a call one day from a recruiter asking if I was interested in doing a mat leave at a boutique staffing agency. I said, sure, why not? It was sounded interesting and marketing seemed fun.
Yeah.
And so I took a leap of faith, and the 3 4 month maternity leave ended up turning into a career in recruiting, where I really got to work on some really cool projects in the boutique staffing setting. When you're in a boutique staffing setting, you don't have all the resources, all the technologies that are available to you. So you have no choice but to really get creative with how you learn your craft and where you tap into your markets and
Right.
really match people with their roles. So all I had was a LinkedIn account, and I had to
Hmm.
work these roles that were coming in. So I learned two things. I learned the marketing world and in terms of how those careers are set up and what each role within marketing does and functions within organizations. And I learned recruiting in terms of what kind, like separating yourself from necessarily like a recruiter and a career advisor, and how you can bring value to the people that you're connecting with, and having a deeper meeting as to, I love what I do because I
Right.
believe in people enjoying what they do every day.
Right.
So great experience. And I ended up staying there for a few years and really learning the ins and outs. I was able to work with some really great companies out in New York City, in helping them build out their digital marketing departments, which was brand new back then. And,
Right.
a really big pivot in marketing at that point. And given the fact that I didn't really have much resources, like the technologies I mentioned earlier, I had to get creative with how I tapped into this market living in Boston. So I would
Hmm.
go out to New York City, and it was just, there was no way that I wouldn't be able to staff or fill a role. It was just that wasn't an option. It was going to get done. I just needed to get creative
Right.
and help bring in business into our boutique, since it was a new market for us.
Hmm.
So I would go to New York City on the first bus out from South Station, and I would go into happy hours in the nearby areas where our clients were. And I would tip the bartender. I'm like, hey, these are my business cards. I'm going to throw them out on your bar. You know, if you can work them a little bit, here you go. And I would go on to the next place. I started making
Wow.
connections. Yeah. So just like, how do I network and how do I maximize this in the city? I'm one person. How do I, let's
Right.
put that in place. I would end
Let
up
me ask you one question. Did you specialize in placing people in marketing, or were you in all different fields?
specializing in marketing,
Okay.
specifically marketing, anything in design, development, teetering into UX. I know sometimes UX, depending who you ask, can be IT or marketing, but
Right.
I was on the UX side too.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it was all about, it was an exciting time, right? Because I was just
Right.
graduating school, I'm hungry, and it's like everything's brand new, and you just, you know, the sky's the limit.
Right.
So even then, in helping bringing in business for the agency that I was working with, and also building a pipeline as a recruiter, I have to build a name for myself, and I so that people come to me, and
Right.
it makes my job a lot easier in terms of attracting, and building an engine for myself, right?
Right.
And so I would attend meetups where I would meet people from different companies, brands, and just start talking to them. They're like, oh, hey, yeah, we're actually having our holiday party at such and such event. You can find it on event. And so I was attending holiday
Wow.
parties just to make connections with people. Um,
You
and,
really knew how to network.
it was just throwing myself out there. And I look back and I think, you know, it seemed so easy, so carefree. And it just reminds you of like, if you really want to make something happen, you're just gonna like, regardless, you're just gonna go for it. Right. And the
Yeah.
fear of like, well, what if they think I'm weird or they're not
Yeah.
gonna know who I am? That takes the back seat because you're having fun with it.
Right.
And so it was just a very like, let me just jump and see where things land. And it, I mean, it was honestly one of the best starting points for my career because I literally had a blank canvas to
Right.
paint with. Once it was time to, all right, I've been doing recruiting for a couple of years now in the boutique agency. I've gotten my, my hands wet. And so what are the other agencies out there that are big staffing agencies that I would want to work for? So doing my research and narrowing it down from there. And I ended up going to a bigger agency that was a more global staffing agency, specifically in the creative marketing and development niche.
Hmm.
They had been around at that point for close to 30 years.
Okay.
So definitely taking that step up of being in a very scrappy and not so structured environment with limited resources to now going to an agency that is established, has resources. So it was exciting for me because I was just thinking, okay, if I can bring every like the grit and the scrappiness that I had here and apply it to an area in a place where I do have technologies to automate things and make things a
Right.
lot easier, like where are we going to go from here? So it was exciting. And during those 6 years at that agency, I worked with some of the biggest brands that I never would have imagined I would have worked
Right.
on. Made I mean, countless relationships with people who, I still am close with today, and also taught me a lot. And I learned a lot from
Yeah.
everyone at all levels. Had some great projects out in New York City with some large luxury brands, where I ended up, the task was staff a 10-week exhibition. And in 2 weeks, I had to find 130 people out in New York City.
Wow.
And I just ran it as a casting call. I was like, all right, time to tap into my theater background. I have this ginormous task to take on. So how do I know how to do this? The only other way is time to take it back to my roots of theater. And
Wow.
ran a casting call, staffed 130 individuals, and managed it for 10 weeks. And it generated great revenue and PR for our agency. So,
That's
um,
awesome. Yeah.
and
I,
so,
I don't know if would know how to do that. That's great.
yeah, it's just, it's almost like, I'm really inspired and motivated by almost like the close to impossible tasks, right? When the odds are against you, it really like just sparks the like the rush in me, and I'm like, all right, go. And it's a good place to play in the work we do. So it
Right.
gives opportunity where, we have no choice but to step out of what our comfort zones are and have to really take into account anything and everything that could be a potential opportunity for a solution for the obstacle
Right.
at hand. So get creative for real.
And are you
And
still at
yeah,
that same company?
no, I'm not. So I was there for 6 years, some of the
Hmm.
best 6 years ever. And I am now working at a hyper growth tech company in Boston.
Hmm.
And I've been there now actually a year coming this week. And I am loving that because it's a hyper growth tech company, fast paced. I would have thought that going in-house would have been, yes, a fast paced tech startup side, but I also thought, I'm like, how much faster than the agency life? And indeed
Yeah.
it is faster. It's a different cadence,
Right.
but I'm having a blast. I'm learning a lot. I'm working with, um, you know, amazing teams to build out our products and our teams that are of developers for those products. And I love, it's a different thing because I was building on the agency side, but I was building community, well, not communities, but building teams in a variety of different companies where you kind of build a brand, hit their needs, and then you move on to the next thing. So you never really get to see
Right.
like the full life of the things that you're building.
Sure.
So in my current role, I get to see that. Every person that I place, I see them come in and the impact that they bring to the business and really building a company from the ground up.
Right.
So it's a lot of opportunity to have a lot of influence and opportunity to learn and take on projects that I've never tackled before. And a lot of different exposure to different sides of recruiting that I, not necessarily would have never considered, but just wasn't in my line of sight. So
Sure.
I'm very thankful for the work that I'm doing there too.
Yeah, that's great. Because if you stay in one position forever, nothing ever changes. And then
Right.
people get bored and stagnant. And as much as you love your job, you're tired of your job. So at
Right.
least with the moves that you've made, you've always kept it fresh and new and fun.
Yeah. It's all about what's the next move or what's the big story I'm building with my career? What are the areas like I know for myself, something challenging and different excites me. So
Hmm.
I know that with every move that I look, I need to understand, okay, where I am now, and if I'm looking at a new job change, okay, what are the areas that aren't really being fulfilled and
Right.
why? And what are the areas that I am loving and I don't want to lose? And
Right.
so when I was getting ready to make a move, I sat down and I made a list of my top 5 companies that I really wanted to work for because of, who they were, what they could potentially like build in terms of a story on my resume and my career capital. And what were they doing in terms of more from a societal point of view? Are they giving back? Are they conscious of the environment? Things that were important to me.
Right.
Um, and then I started looking for roles and I'm like, okay, I know that they have to offer me XYZ. And I know that there are certain things in a job search that I think a lot of people forget to think about because they're thinking of maybe perhaps they're like, oh, I got to get out of this place where I'm at now. Let me find something that
Hmm.
we don't take our time to really sit down and think of what's my level up move and what does that look
Right.
like? And so I
Hmm.
really took the time to really ask myself, what's missing right now in terms of my 9 to 5 work life? What are
Right.
things that I need and why? And being very, very clear on those things so
Hmm.
that I could make sure that holistically I was making the right decision at the end of the day because it checked off the things that I was looking for. Might not check
Right.
all of them off,
Yeah.
but there are a few non-negotiables always, and those
Yeah.
need to be checked off. And then there's the nice to haves and really like organizing your process so that you are finding opportunities that are helping you grow, but
Hmm.
also that you're happy with and you're not feeling like, oh my God, I gotta get up tomorrow and work. I
Yeah.
don't like that feeling.
Right.
Um, and I don't want anyone else to feel that. And translates into how I recruit and the conversations I have with my candidates, really
Right.
asking them, what's the lifestyle you want? Because if your
Perfect.
lifestyle's not in line with what you do for work, you're not going to enjoy it. Vice
Right.
versa. There's never going to
Right.
be a balance. So that's usually like an aha moment for candidates, that are just thinking one way, one path to get to where I'm like, listen, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
It's You're painting a picture. What part of the canvas you're painting on now
Yep.
doesn't mean that you're never going to finish it. So
Right.
where you finish the painting is up to you, and it's no right or wrong.
And what about those people only wanting to make more money? The job doesn't matter. I just want more money.
And that's they're not going to be fulfilled.
Right.
If like you're only chasing the next dollar, that's great, that's fine. Um but after a while the chase becomes so apparent in your repertoire that I a lot of times people don't realize that that also paints on your character, as like in terms of like how you approach work, and can they rely on you for X amount of time that they need for someone to accomplish and finish this specific project
Right.
or side of the business and growth. You know, they're going to look at a resume and say, oh, we only get this person for a year.
Right.
We need something this is really a 3-year project at least. So I usually am pretty good at scoping out like the ones that are just chasing the next dollar.
Yeah.
Um, because at the end of the day, they're not really chasing the work. And
Right.
that's gonna translate into their work ethic. That's going to translate into how they show up for work, how they affect those that they work with on the teams. Um, that person's not usually always happy
Yeah.
anywhere. It
I
doesn't
was
matter
going to
where.
say, and I always found that the happier I was in my job, the more they advanced me and the more
Mhm.
money I made.
Yeah,
And it just kind of automatically happened. It wasn't even something I went after, it just
exactly.
happened.
Exactly. And there's obviously issues like the pay gap. And there's, systemic issues that also contribute to unequal pay. But that's something I also look at very seriously as a recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's kind of like having a voice within the bigger voices of working towards um, activism and righting the wrongs in
Right.
our own way, and how we can personally control them.
Right.
So those are conversations I always bring up and I advocate for whenever possible, and taking that into my own hands of like, hey, I have an opportunity here to right a wrong, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
to make this help this situation improve in this way. So
Mm-hmm.
I do take that really seriously. And there's some people, yeah, that they're chasing money for a specific reason, but with a valid reason, right?
Right.
It's not greed that's
Yeah.
motivating it. It's more of
That's
an
right.
equality
Yeah.
eye, and those opportunities obviously always are a different situation there, and
Yeah.
I value in advocating for.
And when you and I first started to talk, one of the things I liked about you was your whole life. You don't live and breathe recruiting, you have time for other things in your life. Talk to me a little bit about the other things you're doing and why you're
Yeah.
doing them and how you got into them.
Yes. So going back to like my theater background, really enjoying the performance, the arts aspect of life. I on the side, when I'm not recruiting, I am doing, makeup, beauty content online for social media, Instagram, TikTok, just to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's my creative outlet outside of recruiting, where I can sit at my vanity and I'll set up my camera and my lights, and I will try to put together some sort of entertaining piece of content alongside, the tutorials and so forth. But my favorite type of content to create are more of those like skits or dance challenges with makeup and transitions. It was something that I started right before the pandemic. I said, I really love makeup. I've always loved makeup, and I've always loved the transformation of makeup, specifically like special effects makeup. That's my like that's I can get lost in there for hours and just playing in
Right.
front of my with stuff and just experimenting. Always loved it. So I said, I'm just gonna start documenting it and posting it to see what happens. And so that's what I've been doing now for about 3 years. But what started off as just a casual post here and there, it's just been an entire journey of learning how to content plan, learning, SEO marketing strategies, on video editing, like full on video production editing, which that part really hit home for me because I found that I enjoyed it. Like I thoroughly enjoy video editing and getting really crazy with the effects and the transitions just to really create pieces of content that are little bites of a happening for the viewer, for the audience,
Yeah.
so they're like, oh, this piece may have only been like 10-15 seconds long, but it really touched me in some way or excited me, made me smile. Just trying to put out positive vibes out there and the world
Right.
we're living today. Anything I can
Uh,
do to bring some
I'll
smiles.
tell you, you and I are connected on Instagram, and I've been out with other people flipping through my Instagram, and they've seen pictures of you, and were stunned when I
Oh,
said, "Yeah, this person is the same person as this person is with all this effect makeup. You totally transform. It's amazing to me."
thank you. Thank you. Yes, it's a
And
lot of fun. It's, just another way of being creative and flipping the views of life for a little bit, to just go
yeah,
to a different world.
yeah, it's amazing, and you know how to market it, and you're good at it, and I'm envious. I
Thank
think
you.
that that's great. You've come a long way.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So, any other advice you have for people that are looking for a career change and just don't know what they want to do?
Yeah, I would say start with understanding what's the lifestyle that you want to live. What does that look like? Get super, super crystal clear on what that looks like. And next, get very, very clear on what are the things that you need and are non-negotiables. And then what are those that are nice to have? Actually write it out, visualize it, whether it's writing it on a piece of paper and putting it on your mirror every morning where you look at it and you understand it, or just a spreadsheet. Some people do well with spreadsheets
Yeah,
and Excel. Just get it as clear as possible where you have it visualized. Don't just visualize it in your brain. The minute you put it on paper, it becomes real and you start acting on it. And be honest with what it is that you need and you are looking for in a career, and what are the things that you would love to continue doing and why.
hmm,
Tie it to a deeper meaning, your morals, your values, because that's going to lead you. And as long as you're having fun and you feel connected to it in a positive way, you're going to enjoy what you're doing. And like you said, Joni, you're going to start advancing automatically,
right,
because when you love what you do, there's no end or limit to how far you'll go to be great at it.
right. I think that's great advice because I
Thank you.
think all of a sudden somebody will say, I hate what I'm doing. I need to make a change. And then they're stuck. And if all of a sudden they sit down and writing it out does make a big difference and being able to see it, um, it makes such a difference in guiding you and knowing where you're going. So that's great
Exactly.
advice.
Great.
Okay. Well, again, this I'm Joni Vernars with Looking at Careers with Joni, and I'm here with Louisiana, and I think she gave us some good advice today on what to do when changing careers. And so, if you liked this video, click like below and leave some comments. We'd love to hear what you had to say. So, thanks, Louisiana, and
Thank
I'm
you.
sure we'll be talking again soon.
Thanks for having me. It was a
Uh
pleasure.
huh. Bye bye.